He was just a K9 on a routine hospital patrol until he stopped cold outside a sealed door and began to bark, low, guttural, relentless. No one had been in that room for days, but when they opened it, what they found changed everything. No one paid much attention to the dog that night. He was just part of the background, another K9 unit doing rounds in a hospital too busy to notice much of anything. Nurses hurried past with charts, machines beeped softly behind half-closed curtains, and the fluorescent lights cast their usual pale glow over the tiled floors. But Shadow, a weathered Belgian Malinois with a streak of gray along his muzzle, wasn't just any dog. And that night, he wasn't just doing his job. Officer Harper Lynn, calm and focused as always, walked alongside him with one hand loosely wrapped around the leash. It was their 5th hospital patrol this month. Routine, predictable, nothing more than a quiet sweep of the ER wings, the exit doors, and the pediatric floor, mostly to reassure patients and sometimes to cheer up the kids. Harper liked the night shifts. They were quieter, less drama. And Shadow, with his calm demeanor and sharp senses, made the long hours feel less lonely. She had worked with plenty of dogs before, but none quite like him. Shadow didn't bark for attention, didn't need constant cues. He listened to everything. They had just passed the elevator bay when it happened. Shadow stopped. No sound, no command, just a full-body freeze. His ears twitched, his shoulders locked, and then, slowly, his head turned toward room 313. Harper followed his gaze. The door was sealed off with yellow tape and a laminated notice. "Do not enter, under maintenance." "Come on, buddy," she whispered, giving the leash a small tug. But Shadow didn't move. He lowered his head, let out a low, guttural growl, deep, rumbling, not angry, but warning. Harper felt it more than she heard it, a vibration in the leash, a chill down her spine. "Shadow?" she asked quietly. Her voice softened. "What is it?" The dog's body stiffened. His nose twitched. Then came the sound that made her blood run cold. A whine, soft at first, then broken, almost trembling. It wasn't the sound of a dog sensing danger. It was the sound of a dog feeling pain. Not his own, someone else's. Harper's instincts flipped. She stepped toward the door. Her hand hovered over her radio. The hallway suddenly felt quieter than it should have, and all she could think was, what the hell is behind that door? The hallway had gone still by the time the night supervisor arrived with the keys. Harper's fingers hovered near her holster, not out of fear, but instinct. Shadow hadn't moved an inch. He remained planted in front of room 313, ears pinned back, tail low, body taut like a wire. The door creaked as it opened, the kind of sound that somehow made everything worse. A rush of stale, sour air spilled out. Not the kind that came from cleaning supplies or disuse, but something heavier. Uncirculated. Unnatural. The kind of air that felt wrong in a hospital, where nothing should ever sit untouched for long. Harper stepped in first, sweeping her flashlight across the small, dim room. Equipment covered in clear plastic sheets, a chair overturned near the window, dust curling along the corners of the floor, and then, in the farthest corner, her beam landed on something that didn't fit. Movement. Tiny. Slow. Harper froze. Curled beneath a crumpled white lab coat was a little girl. She looked no older than 7. Her legs were pulled to her chest, one bare foot peeked out, smeared with dirt. Her thin arms wrapped tight around her knees, her eyes wide, unblinking, glassy. There were faint bruises along her neck, and even in the dim light, Harper could see the shadows of restraint marks along her wrists. She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't blink. She just stared at Shadow. The dog stepped forward slowly, one paw at a time. His posture softened, no longer alert, no longer growling, just calm and heartbreakingly gentle. Harper knelt beside the girl. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're safe now, okay?" No response, no sound, no movement. She looked past Harper, straight into Shadow's eyes, as if he were the only one who understood. There was no hospital record matching her. No name, no ID bracelet, no missing persons report. It was as if she didn't exist, until tonight, until Shadow barked. The hospital's security team worked through the night. Harper stayed on site, pacing the hallway outside pediatric triage as doctors examined the little girl. Shadow remained curled up near the door, refusing to leave, as if his presence alone was keeping her safe. By morning, the investigators had combed through hours of footage from every hallway near room 313. Still, nothing. No one had entered the room in over 10 days. The girl hadn't walked in herself. There were no records, no alerts, no missing persons report, no match in any state database. It was like she had appeared out of thin air. Until one tech reviewed a blind corner near the emergency stairwell, the one camera with a history of static interference. The footage was grainy, black and white, time-stamped 3 nights earlier, just after 2:17 a.m. A hospital janitor pushed a large cleaning cart into frame. He moved slowly, casually, nothing suspicious, until you looked closer. Tucked beneath the overhanging linens, just above the wheels, was a small foot, motionless. The clip was silent, but Harper's breath caught in her throat. Replaying the footage again and again didn't help. It only confirmed the quiet horror of what they were seeing. The girl had been smuggled in, hidden in plain sight. And the man pushing the cart? Caleb Rowe. 12 years working maintenance at Winmere Medical. Always showed up early. Never took sick days. No complaints from staff. The kind of man who smiled at everyone, knew where the coffee filters were kept, and remembered the names of people's kids. No one had ever questioned him. But when detectives visited his dorm-style apartment just 2 miles from the hospital, something was off. The lights were still on. The sink was running. His uniform hung neatly on a hook by the door, and his cell phone, still unlocked, lay face down on the desk with one message unsent. She won't make a sound. Promise. The place looked like someone had left in the middle of a breath. Drawers open, a single suitcase gone. The TV frozen on a paused screen from a children's cartoon. There was no sign of struggle, but Harper knew. Caleb hadn't fled out of panic. He had planned it. He knew exactly how long it would take them to find the girl, and that no one would suspect him in time. But what he hadn't planned on, what no one could have predicted, was Shadow, a dog with no voice, no badge, no reason to stop at that door, except instinct and love. It took 2 days before the little girl whispered her name. Ava. Just that. Nothing more. The doctors were gentle. The social workers tried to reach her. But it was Harper who sat beside her in silence, letting Shadow rest his head on Ava's blanket-covered legs. No questions, no pressure, just presence. No reports matched her. No family had called, no Amber Alert, no missing poster in any nearby town. No one was looking for her. That silence, the kind that screamed, was what haunted Harper the most. Ava didn't flinch at medical equipment or strangers, but the sound of a man's voice, any man, made her freeze. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for her parents. She just watched everything with eyes far older than her 7 years. Eventually, in one of the rare moments when Harper was alone with her, Ava whispered a sentence so quiet it barely escaped her lips. Uncle Caleb said if I stayed quiet, I wouldn't be taken somewhere worse. The words sat heavy in the room. 8 days. That's how long Ava had been trapped in that sealed room. No windows, no light, just a broken cot, a coat for warmth, a bottle of expired milk, and a crumpled sleeve of crackers gone soft with moisture. What kept her alive wasn't the food. It wasn't hope. She had stopped hoping. It was a sound, a bark, Shadow's bark. The first sound she'd heard after more than 200 hours of silence. She would later describe it not as loud or scary, but as real. Something outside the silence, something alive. And when that door opened and Shadow appeared, not a monster, not a man, just a dog with warm eyes and steady breath, something shifted. She hadn't moved for days, but when she saw him, her eyes blinked. Once, then again. The world didn't feel safe yet, but for the first time in over a week, it felt possible. In the days that followed, Ava remained in the pediatric trauma wing under a quiet cloud of watchfulness. She still didn't talk. Not to the nurses, not to the therapists, and barely even to Harper. But every time Shadow entered the room, something changed. He never bounded toward her or licked her face like a typical dog might. He walked in slow, careful, respectful, as if he knew how fragile she was, as if he understood that loud joy could shatter her more than silence ever had. Ava would sit cross-legged on the hospital bed, eyes distant. Then she'd spot him. Her fingers would twitch. Her shoulders would lower, and she would reach out. At first, just to let her hand rest against his fur. Then, slowly, she began to press her face to his shoulder, nestling into the soft curve of his neck like she was trying to disappear into something warm and safe. Harper visited every week, always with Shadow. She didn't come to push Ava to talk or to coax out details of what had happened. She came to be there, quiet, steady, staying. Most of the staff thought Ava might never speak again. Her mutism seemed too deep-rooted, too laced with fear. But one afternoon, when Harper had been sitting in the corner for over an hour, flipping idly through a notepad while Shadow lay curled beneath the window, Ava crawled off the bed, padded across the floor in hospital socks, and hugged Shadow without a word. And then she smiled. It was crooked, tiny, almost uncertain, but it was a smile. Harper blinked hard. Later, in an interview, she would say, "I don't think Ava needed anyone to talk. She just needed someone who wouldn't leave. Someone whose presence didn't come with questions or fear or noise. Just quiet loyalty." Even Shadow had changed. He'd always been alert, dependable, but after the rescue he became more guarded during patrols. He growled at hallways he once ignored. He flinched at elevator dings. But with Ava, he was the gentlest soul imaginable. It was as if her trauma lived in him now, too. And instead of protecting her from the world, he had chosen to share the weight. 2 wounded hearts, 1 silent connection, and somehow in each other, they both began to heal. 3 months later, the break came in the middle of a rainy Tuesday. A freight operator at the Seattle shipping docks noticed a man lingering near the edge of a cargo manifest line, alone, jittery, clutching a weathered duffel bag that looked like it hadn't been unpacked in weeks. When approached, the man gave a name that didn't match his ID. Security was called. A fingerprint scan revealed exactly what Harper had been waiting to hear. Caleb Rowe had been found. He didn't run when the officers surrounded him, didn't argue, just looked down at his hands and muttered, "I didn't hurt her. I just didn't want her taken somewhere worse." That line would echo through the entire station for days. Because as the investigation unfolded, what began as a rescue of one little girl opened the door to something far more chilling. Caleb had a list, names, first names only, scrawled across the inside of a worn leather notebook. Most couldn't be traced, some might have been imaginary, but at least 3 were real, matched to missing persons cases that had quietly slipped through the cracks. He had taken Ava, he said, because she looked too quiet. No one would notice she was gone. And for a time, he had been right. The trial moved swiftly, driven by hard evidence and unshakable witness statements. Caleb was sentenced to life without parole, his crimes spanning abduction, child endangerment, and multiple counts of unlawful detainment. But the real story, the one that mattered most, wasn't written in court documents. It was written in the walls of room 313. Not long after the verdict, the hospital began renovations. What had once been a forgotten, sealed space was transformed with soft lighting, warm murals, sensory toys, and padded furniture into a therapy suite for children recovering from trauma. They named it Silent Hope. On the wall just outside the door, beneath a gently glowing light fixture, hangs a large photo. Ava, holding on to Shadow's collar, forehead resting against his eyes closed, her face peaceful. Underneath it reads, "It wasn't the bark, it was the silence it broke." By now, Ava has found her voice again, not just in speech, but in presence. She talks more every day. She laughs when Shadow rolls onto his back for belly rubs. She answers Harper's questions, slowly but with growing confidence. But what she talks about most, the stories she repeats to nurses, to volunteers, to the other kids in group sessions, are about the dog who found her. "He knew I was in there," she tells them. "He came anyway. He didn't leave." Ava still struggles sometimes. She startles easily. She sleeps with a light on, but she no longer flinches at the world. She meets it with cautious steps, and Shadow always 1 pace beside her. One morning, Harper asked Ava what she wanted to be when she grew up. The girl smiled and answered without hesitation, "I want to train dogs like Shadow, so they can find kids like me." And in that moment, Harper didn't see the frightened little girl in the corner of room 313. She saw a survivor, a future trainer, a quiet voice learning how to roar, because one dog, one bark, one act of instinctive love refused to stay silent. Sometimes it's not the light that breaks the darkness, it's a bark, a heartbeat on 4 legs. A dog who stops in front of a door no one else would question and refuses to walk away. Shadow didn't just follow training, he followed something deeper. He didn't just sniff out danger, he felt the fear the rest of the world missed. He saw what no one else saw. He listened when no one else was listening. This isn't just a story about a rescue. It's about trust, about healing, about the invisible thread between a child too scared to speak and a dog who never needed words to understand her. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that heroes come in fur with steady eyes and silent strength, please like, share, and subscribe to Positive Tales, because sometimes the ones who save us don't wear capes. They wear collars, and they remind us the strongest bonds aren't always human.